archetypal embodiment as a spiritual path. Let's talk about what exactly that is and how we can do this, should it be something that sings to you. Let me be upfront with you first before we get into any of this so you know what you're kind of getting yourself into. I am not the best person to tell you about it, to find words and to talk about archetypal embodiment. But I would challenge anybody on the planet about doing archetypal embodiment. That's my unique skill set, is the embodiment of an archetype. So when it comes to archetypal embodiment, I am way better at facilitating something for you, way better at creating an archetypal Shakti energy storm that touches that particular archetype in you and wakes it up. You can call it like an archetypal activation. You could call it an awakening of that particular. To me, they're all sacred energies. That's how I work with archetypes. They are particular blueprints of energy out in the world. Now, for this conversation and for what I can bring to you, what I can bring to the table in this conversation is really specifically spiritual awakening. So I really want to hold that close, is archetypes for spiritual awakening. And let's define that a little bit. What is a spiritual awakening? So for this conversation, a spiritual awakening to me is, I was going to say twofold, but it's actually threefold. Spiritual awakening, threefold path. One, it's the spiritual awakening of more consciousness. So it's awakening to more of what many spiritual traditions are, the no-thingness, the void, right? Do a meditation into no thought, no mind. You're expanding your consciousness. You're letting it become nothing. Shiva state, right? It's a divine masculine kind of a path. It's beautiful. It's stunning. So to me, that's a form of spiritual awakening. And if we're talking about this particular journey, conversation around spiritual awakening with the archetypes, that's one level of it, of the threefold path. Level 2 of it, if that's the formless and that's the no-thingness, then there's the opposite side of the coin, the form and the allness, right? This would be considered Shakti. This would be considered the spiritual awakening to life energy. It's the spiritual awakening to the divine in matter, the divine in my body, the divine in every form of life that there is. And you could say that that's the divine feminine form of awakening, right? So we're talking threefold path, right? There's one, Shiva, Christ consciousness, right? It's the no-thingness, the great void, and all the mysteries that are held there, all the spiritual awakening. There's many, many gifts. There's many, many archetypes that open us up to those. And then the second, just to kind of recap things, right? If that was the first part of the threefold path, the second part of the threefold path is the feminine mysteries, right? The feminine mysteries, the mysteries held in life, Shakti, right? The divine feminine, the Dakini, Shakti, right? Life force, that energy, the form of that energy. And that's got a whole set of spiritual awakening in it, right? The divine feminine spiritual awakening, the Kundalini awakening, the Shakti awakening, the sacred sexuality and pleasure awakening is often considered feminine forms of awakening. Now, of course, there's the equal and opposite masculine sacred sexuality form of awakening. I've done lots and lots of videos on that, but we're not going into that in this particular conversation. If you want more on that, you can search around and we'll maybe throw some links around so you can dive into a few more episodes on that, should that sing to you. But the third energy is if we have the masculine consciousness and we have the feminine life force, and consciousness and life force meet, formlessness and form meet, Shiva and Shakti meet, there's a union that happens. This is the third energy. This is the third of the threefold path. Now this is a complete another set of spiritual awakenings held within the union of the two. And this is beautiful. Like, isn't there, you're just like, what? I remember when I first learned this, I was blown away because I was on such a formless consciousness, no thingness, very masculine path, right? It was like vipassanas, you know, those 10-day meditation retreats where you don't talk and you just like equanimity, you know, like nothingness, stillness, like, wow, great. I love it. This is amazing. There's a lot of mysteries here. I feel like there's a little more. So all of that is held in spiritual awakening for this conversation. Spiritual awakening. So this conversation, I'm just going to bring us back to it, is archetypes for spiritual awakening. And to put them in three categories, right? The masculine, the feminine, the union. So now that we've defined spiritual awakening, let's define an archetype. So what is an archetype? Okay, let's start with the basics here. And that's a really good question, to be honest with you. What's an archetype? An archetype, for this conversation, many people will define this in other ways, but this is like the mysteries. This is archetypal embodiment. This is the activating the sacred mysteries and the sacred energies within each of these flavors of the divine, right? So when we're talking about archetypes for this conversation, it's a unique set of sacred technology, sacred wisdoms, and sacred energies and mysteries held in each one of these archetypal energies. It will impact you in a certain way. So when you work with, let's say, the sacred energy of Chinnamasta, I don't know why she's coming to my mind in this moment. Chinnamasta as an archetypal energy. She's an archetypal energy. Now, archetypal energies, they live in everything, right? As within, so without, as above, so below. They live within us. Many of them are dormant within us. Some of them are very alive and awake within us. And some of them we've never tapped into. A lot of them we've never put a name to. So for some of them, you will have this sacred energy awake in you. You will have the gifts awake and alive in you, and the mysteries and the knowings awake and alive in you. If you've done some of this work, I mean, and some of us, we just come in with some of these awake in us, right? Every path is extraordinarily unique and perfect. So they're within us, they're outside of us. It's almost like looking at a couple different ways to look at this is how many have we woken up to? And then to what degree have we woken up to them? And then this one, what are we meant to wake up to? Like your unique soul blueprint, right? If you were to feel into your true north, right? Your north node, compass pointing north, your, follow your bliss, like that joy path of purpose, of aliveness, of this is just what I was here to do. What are the archetypes that you're meant to awaken to? And to what degree are you meant to awaken to them? So now let's go back to Chinnamasta. I know I'm kind of bouncing all over the place here. Let's go back to Chinnamasta. So Chinnamasta, as an archetypal energy, a sacred energy, she holds the flavor of one, taking your ego away, right? The little self. So she's seen as cutting her own head off, right? This is one of her esoteric mystical gifts. She takes her own head off, which is the symbolic representation of stepping into one's bigger self. You're removing false self, little self, ego self out of the way of your spiritual self, right? Because this conversation is about spiritual awakening. Your spiritual self coming to the forefront. So archetypal embodiment with Chinnamasta is going to put your spirit self at the forefront. And it's going to move false self, ego self out of the way, right? When properly activating that sacred energy within yourself. That's the gift that comes online. That's what awakens in us, is this capacity to, at any moment, any time, move our little self, false self out of the way and really step into our true self, our spirit self. Okay, so we're defining archetypes still. We've kind of defined spiritual awakening. Then we've kind of defined archetypes for this particular conversation. Now, let's weave it back into the threefold path. So there are archetypes that awaken the sacred feminine within you. There are archetypes that awaken the sacred masculine within you. And then there are archetypes that awaken the sacred union within you. Do you see that? So, for example, Venus, really easy one. Many of us know Venus, Venus, goddess of beauty, right? God, like the sensual, feminine goddess of love. We know her in astrology. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. It's the feminine nature. It's pretty common parlance. Venus sits in the feminine realms. And so when it's a spiritual awakening with Venus, it's like waking up to feminine flow. It'd be like a sensual awakening to the divine in beauty. The sacred heart could awaken the sacred sensuality within self. Do you see that? That's a sacred energy awakening, having a spiritual awakening in that flavor of the archetypal energy. Now let's keep going with this. Let's take her counterpart, Mars. Now, many people don't think Mars, god of war, is a sacred energy. They don't think a spiritual awakening with Mars. You've got to be kidding me, Sabrina. This is why this is such an intense path. This is why this path will strip you naked, and it will rip out hidden wounds and hidden fears and hidden blocks. So let's go with Mars and let's see what happens here. So Mars sits in the masculine realm, right? The threefold path, the masculine, the feminine, and the union. So Mars sitting strongly in the masculine path. Now Mars as a spiritual awakener, sacred warrior. Sacred warrior. Archetypal activation, archetypal embodiment, spiritual awakening with the archetypes, it will flush out the expressions of energy through our system to bring them up to a third stage divine expression, so that the warrior in you, the warrior in me, doesn't come from a place of unconscious, toxic warrior. The warrior in you, right? Spiritual awakening with Mars as a sacred energy, a sacred activation with Mars. The warrior in you comes from a high voltage, divinely inspired place, right? I am a love warrior. I am a sacred warrior. I wield my sword from a place of divinely aligned in the highest good of the all of everything. But my warrior is alive. Do you see that? Do you see that? So sometimes people on the spiritual awakening path, they've awoken like the angel in them, They've awoken the angel. Great, amazing, amazing. We have grace and light and love moving through the angel sides of us, the light sides of us. But then you see those same people getting into a conversation with their partner. They have zero warrior, or their warrior is not a third stage divine expression of the warrior. Their warrior is coming at someone from the second stage, right? Distorted aspect of the warrior, where it's toxic warrior. It's coming from a place of resentment. It's coming from a place of fear. There's so much to say here. My gosh, I wish we were just like live. I wish this was a workshop and I could just go, okay, what's alive here? What's bubbling up for you? Like what's coming to the surface? And maybe that's just a quick reflective question for you to feel into for yourself. You can always pause this and just go like, okay, what's alive here for me? So here's a good reflective question. Where do you fall from graces, right? Where do you fall from graces? When you move into your mother, do you fall from graces? When you move into being the daughter, do you fall from graces? When you move into your warrior, do you fall from graces? When you move into your lover, do you fall from graces? When you move into more masculine energies, do you fall from the graces? Meaning, are you able to, in all areas of your life, every conversation with every person, every aspect of you, is it able to come from a place of high voltage, third stage divine expression of you, right? So the mother in you comes from high voltage, third stage. The having a challenging conversation with your lover comes from high voltage, third stage conversation. Sitting at family dinner, right? Where you have a very specific set of archetypal patterns that you are playing out because those are family dynamics. Does that come from third stage high voltage divine expression? Isn't this beautiful? Isn't this beautiful? This is archetypal embodiment. This is spiritual awakening with the archetypes. The reason this path is so intense is because it goes to your gnarliest, nastiest places and you cannot escape them. So if you were just on an awakening path and you were like, wow, I'm just going to open up to more divine feminine in her fullness, right? You could say divine feminine in her fullness could be considered Shakti, right? All forms of the feminine, right? The great feminine average. And you just open up more life force, more feminine, right? And you want to express in a third stage, you'll go to the one that you've already got developed, right? You'll go to the one that's already been purified, that's already been woken up, that's already been sanctified. But what are the gnarly parts of you that haven't been sanctified yet? This is what archetypal embodiment does. When you work with full spectrum archetypes, if you work with one archetype, that's not full spectrum archetype. You work with 36 archetypes. That's pretty full spectrum. Like that's full on. You work with 12 archetypes. You're doing pretty good. You get to 24, that's pretty full level living. You get to 36, you are now on fire with the amount of parts of self that have been touched by sacred energy. So it's literally Mars, when you do archetypal embodiment, spiritual awakening with Mars, archetypal embodiment, you specifically go to that thread in yourself. So you specifically have to look at your judgments around masculine in warrior form. We do. And how do we embody that? How do we relate to that in our world? So archetypal embodiment isn't just about how we express it. It's also how we dance with it in another person, how we dance with it in our work environment, our family environment, how we dance with it with our partner, with our friends. Okay, I want to do one more example because we did the feminine Venus, then we did the masculine Mars as archetypal energies for sacred, for spiritual awakening. Now let's do, this is so fun. I love how this stuff weaves together. Let's do one in the third place of the threefold path, that sacred union place. Guess who this is? One of them. There's many. One of them. Chinnamasta. Chinnamasta, who we started with. So Chinnamasta, we already talked about, one of the spiritual awakening gifts that she brings to us is the taking off our little self, taking off our ego self, and putting our spiritual self first. I mean, that in itself is a mad spiritual awakening, right? But then you go to the next level of her spiritual awakening. So archetypally embodying this, like you become this. That's how this works. Like you become it. You don't get to sneak out of it. You don't get to think about it. You don't get to read the myth about it. That's not an archetypal embodiment. That's doing it outside of yourself. That's cognizing it. It legitimately touches every cell of your body. It shifts and transforms every cell. That's why it's called embodiment, right? It's embodiment. It's every organ. It's every cell. It's every layer of your body, right? Mental body, physical body, emotional body, energy body, the whole of the dang thing. So the next level of spiritual awakening with Chinnamasta with regards to the sacred union is that she is standing on an archetypal couple making love. She's literally standing on Shiva Shakti making love. She's standing on an archetypal couple making love. She decapitates herself. She's running blood, which is legitimately like the sacred energy of the union that she's channeling through her body, right? So you, an archetypal embodiment, you are channeling through your body the mysteries of the union of the archetypal couple making love. And we all know how loaded the tantric path is, how many mysteries are steeped in the tantric path. She's literally moving the tantric mysteries through herself with her ego out of the way, soul in the front, and she's pouring this out of her head is decapitated, right? So out of her neck in the form of blood, giving the gift as an act of service. Y'all, this to me, this lights me up from a standpoint of the limitless possibilities and potentials held within the embodiment of these mysteries. It is the archetypal embodiment for spiritual awakening. You're not just having a spiritual awakening. You are having a spiritual embodiment of the mysteries, of the gifts that come online, these sacred gifts that awaken in you. I mean, really and truly, do an archetypal embodiment with Chinnamasta. You have that blueprint to hold that. You suddenly are able to move that amount of, let's call it what it is, creation energy, right? The sacred masculine, the sacred feminine in union, it taps right into creation energy, that which gives life. You can run that through your system and you can gift that out into the world through your work. Maybe you write books, maybe you're a one-on-one counselor, maybe you're raising children. You can literally gift from this place of all of consciousness itself, all of life force itself. That's the divine masculine consciousness. That's the divine feminine, all of life force. All of consciousness, all of life force interwoven together, moving through your body, everything in the form of love being given as a gift because your little ego is out of the way. P.S. One of the other things Chinnamasta gives to us is not just this capacity to serve, right? To give. She also, which many people have on the spiritual path, is the like self-sacrificial martyrdom wound, right? like the Christ wound, the self-sacrifice, must give until I'm so depleted that I'm dying, right? That one, many people have it. Chinnamasta, in her spiritual awakening, archetypal embodiment gifting of the healing, she heals that in us. She helps us to evolve through that karma if we have that karma. So she's holding her decapitated head, and guess what? The gift that she's giving isn't just pouring out into other mouths. It's pouring into her own mouth. That in itself, that right there, and I know some of y'all are feeling this. Let me know in the comments. I would love to know. I would love to know. I know this is just a podcast. Like I'm not facilitating activations. I'm not guiding us through a journey. I'm not here to, awaken Chinnamasta in all of you, or Mars or Venus in all of you. But I would love to know, how does this touch you? How is this conversation touching you? How is it for you? I'm genuinely want to know. I'm not just like some, person giving lip service. Like I'm a real human and I read the comments. I do. I really, really do. Between my team and I, we read every single comment on YouTube, on every single video. No kidding. No kidding. And I would love to know. I don't know if I should do more conversations like this. And I would love to know if this touches you in some way. All right, let's talk a little bit more archetypal embodiment. How? Let's talk about the how, right? So we've talked about, what it is. We've defined the spiritual awakenings from it. We've defined archetypes. We've kind of like touched in a little bit what archetypes are, how it looks, or how it kind of works as spiritual awakening and what it wakes up in you, the mysteries, the wisdom, the gifts that switch on. And let's talk a little bit about how. Now, let me feel for a second. This is hard to talk about. Let me just be honest about it. This is hard to talk about because I'm a person in the world who, part of what I do in the world is to activate these energies in people. And so it's very weird for me to talk about it. Maybe I'll talk about it like this. The Shakti alive and awake in someone else can awaken the Shakti in you. So if there is someone who is holding an intention, right? Holding an intention of activating your sacred warrior, your Mars, holding that intention with absolute highest regards, third stage divine expression of Mars, right? And holding you in the highest regard to activate that energy in you. And that energy in them, they've worked through so much of that. And they're able to deliver that in a way that the Shakti in them, right? Or the Mars sacred energy in them can activate and touch and wake up the Mars sacred energy in you. That's one way that it can happen. It's one way that it can happen. It can happen organically. Sometimes it happens in relationship. Sometimes someone holds, this has happened to me, in certain relationships, someone will hold an extreme, I'll give you an example with archetypes actually. Someone held an extreme expression of Hades, Pluto. The consort, archetypal couple is Pluto and Persephone, Hades and Persephone, right? So in a relationship, when there's like the polar dancing of the masculine and the feminine, and you have the polarity, the arc of it, right? There's a North Pole and a South Pole. They're like magnets and they attract each other, right? Well, someone in strong Pluto Hades would then move me into strong Persephone. So Persephone would strongly wake up in me, not because this person was giving me Hades activation. It's because they were activating and initiating the archetypal opposite to Hades, right? Persephone. It would be like Mars and Venus. It would be like if someone really showed up in Mars energy and then they almost like push you into your Venusian energy. You can soften because you can let go of your own masculine and really open up to the feminine. Does that make sense? That's another way that it can happen. It can, of course, happen in dreams. It can happen in reading a book. It can happen in mantras. It can happen online. It can happen in retreats. It can happen at the walking out in the woods. So it can happen many, many, many different ways, many, many, many different forms. How far we're each uniquely called to go with them is very unique to our path. I'm obviously called to go pretty stinking far since the whole of ReWilding was founded on archetypal embodiment. Did you know that? The whole of ReWilding. ReWilding for Women, the ReWilding Way, ReWilding with Sabrina Lynn podcast, all of our retreats, our priestess training, our everything, IX program, everything has been founded on archetypal embodiment. Yeah. So just honoring, how far you are wanting to go with them. Let me feel if there's anything else to kind of wrap up this conversation around archetypal embodiment. Gosh. I love just sitting in the silence. I do. I love just sitting in the silence, the void of the masculine. That, like Shiva, right? Shiva's another just masculine archetypal energy. And that just great nothingness that he brings in. I think that's it for this conversation. There's a free resource called The 6 Faces of the Feminine. It's a masterclass I put together a long time ago. So if you want to see like baby rewilding Sabrina, you can go do The 6 Faces of the Feminine. It goes into the mother, the lover, the mystic, the warrior, the medicine woman, and the dark goddess. And those are faces that hold archetypal energies within them. You could consider them archetypes as well. So that's something that you could explore a little bit further. Again, it's completely free, but just a little warning. I was a baby when I put that together. It's still beautiful work, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work. Just know I was a very different human being. I've had many years since then of working in these realms, and it has definitely moved me. So maybe even just watching that will make you giggle a little bit. Our events, if you want to do some of this in person, like I really want to get these activations in person. I want to feel what is this like in person. You can look at our events page. You can see the list of events that we have coming up. There's always archetypal embodiment in everything that we do. And the last thing you can feel into is if you're not a member of ReWilding already, we have a way that you can easily access a lot of archetypal embodiment, and that's in this beautiful space we call living close to the bone. And a lot of archetypal activations come in there as well. So you'll find details to all of that stuff below. I, again, would love to hear what you have to say in the comments. Really and truly, tell me what you want more of. Tell me what you want more of. And tell me how this touched you. All right. Huge love to you all. Thank you so much for being here.